Welcome to episode 23 of your CYSA Plus Prepcast. Today we explore Identity and Access Management Models, also referred to as IAM. This episode is dedicated to helping you understand how identities are created, authenticated, and authorized, and how access is controlled, monitored, and revoked. These are essential responsibilities in the role of any cybersecurity analyst. Identity misconfigurations, privilege misuse, and access violations are some of the most common causes of data breaches. Knowing how to manage and monitor identity frameworks allows analysts to detect unauthorized access, enforce security policies, and respond to threats effectively. This episode will provide the structured knowledge you need to excel in both the exam and your day-to-day responsibilities. So let's begin with a solid definition. Identity and access management is a combination of policies, processes, and technologies that control who can access what, under which conditions, and for how long. IAM ensures that only authorized users and trusted devices can access sensitive data, applications, and infrastructure. It spans everything from initial account creation to access provisioning to session monitoring and account deactivation. The analyst's role in IAM is to ensure access controls are appropriate, that authentication mechanisms are secure, and that monitoring systems are in place to detect misuse or anomalies. A clear understanding of IAM models allows analysts to enforce least privilege, reduce insider risk, and limit the spread of external attacks. One of the most important responsibilities of analysts is identity management. This includes understanding how accounts are created, how access is granted or modified, how identity verification is performed, and how accounts are eventually deactivated. Provisioning should follow predefined roles and policies. Verification may involve HR systems, user directories, or external identity providers. Provisioning should be automated where possible to prevent orphaned accounts. Analysts must ensure these processes are audited and aligned with security policies. When accounts are not managed properly, they become prime targets for attackers or disgruntled insiders. On the CYSA Plus exam, you may be asked to evaluate identity lifecycle scenarios and identify missing safeguards. Authentication is another core function. Analysts must understand how authentication mechanisms verify user identities and how they are classified. Common methods include something you know, like a password, something you have, like a smart card or mobile token, and something you are, like a fingerprint or facial recognition scan. Each method has its own strengths and weaknesses. Passwords are easily guessed or phished. Tokens can be lost or cloned. Biometrics can be spoofed or compromised. Analysts should recommend authentication combinations based on risk, convenience, and available infrastructure. On the exam, be prepared to compare different authentication methods or recommend the strongest option based on a given scenario. Multifactor authentication is a major enhancement to traditional authentication. It requires users to present two or more different types of credentials. For example, a user might enter a password and then approve a prompt on their mobile device. MFA significantly reduces the risk of account compromise, especially when passwords are reused or stolen. Analysts must understand how MFA solutions are deployed, which platforms support them, and how logs are monitored to detect MFA bypass attempts. The CYSA Plus exam may include questions about how to implement or troubleshoot MFA, especially in cloud environments or on sensitive systems. Single sign-on, or SSO, is another important concept. It allows users to log in once and gain access to multiple systems or applications without re-authenticating. This improves user experience and reduces password fatigue, but it also centralizes risk. If an attacker gains access to the SSO platform, they can potentially access all connected services. Analysts must ensure strong authentication at the SSO entry point, monitor SSO logs closely, and be able to respond quickly if the system is compromised. You should know how SSO integrates with identity providers and what protocols it uses. Expect questions that compare SSO with traditional login systems or ask you to evaluate the risk of an SSO deployment. Federated identity management allows users from one organization to access systems in another without creating new accounts. This is common in business partnerships, educational institutions, or cloud services. Federation is enabled by protocols like SAML, OAuth, and OpenID Connect. Analysts must know how these protocols function, how tokens are issued and validated, and what risks are associated with federated trust relationships. A compromised identity in one system may lead to unauthorized access in another, so monitoring is critical. Federation simplifies access but introduces shared risk. The CYSA Plus exam may present scenarios involving federated users and ask how to validate their access or limit their privileges. Privileged access management is one of the most sensitive IAM functions. PAM controls access to administrative accounts that can make significant changes to systems, databases, or network configurations. Analysts should enforce policies such as just-in-time access, where elevated permissions are granted temporarily and only for approved tasks. Session recording, command logging, and strict approval processes are used to monitor and audit administrator actions. Analysts must ensure that privileged accounts are monitored for abnormal behavior, such as logging in during off hours or accessing systems outside normal responsibilities. On the exam, expect questions about privileged escalation, PAM configuration, and detecting abuse of administrative access. Passwordless authentication is gaining popularity in modern security architecture. This approach eliminates traditional passwords and instead relies on biometrics, cryptographic tokens, or trusted devices. Analysts must understand the implementation details of passwordless systems, how they reduce phishing risk, and how they integrate with existing IAM frameworks. These systems often use asymmetric cryptography, storing the private key on the user's device and verifying signatures with the public key. Passwordless methods improve security and user experience, but must be paired with strong device controls and recovery procedures. You may be asked to compare passwordless systems to traditional authentication or identify scenarios where passwordless is most beneficial. PAS access security brokers are security tools that sit between users and cloud services, providing visibility and enforcement capabilities. CASBs integrate with IAM systems to monitor user behavior, enforce compliance policies, and prevent data leakage. Analysts use CASBs to detect unauthorized access, identify risky applications, and block sensitive data transfers. CASBs can also provide encryption, authentication enforcement, and detailed reporting. On the CYSA Plus exam, you may see questions about how CASBs operate, how they enhance cloud IAM visibility, and how they help identify identity-based attacks in cloud environments. Each of these IAM models and tools helps form the layered defense that analysts rely on to secure the enterprise. As identities become more distributed and attackers focus more on credential theft, IAM becomes the front line of cybersecurity defense. Analysts who understand these models are better equipped to spot early signs of compromise, enforce least privilege, and ensure users access only what they need. For more cyber-related content and books, please check out cyberauthor.me. Also, there are more security courses on cybersecurity and more at baremetalcyber.com. Now that we've covered the foundational IAM components and modern access control tools, let's dive deeper into specific access control models and operational practices that analysts must master. These models determine how permissions are assigned, enforced, and reviewed across systems, applications, and cloud services. A cybersecurity analyst must not only understand how these models function in theory, but also how to evaluate them in practice, apply them correctly within different environments, and detect when they are being misused or improperly configured. The CYSA Plus exam expects you to identify which model best fits a given use case and recognize potential flaws that could lead to unauthorized access or privilege escalation. Let's begin with role-based access control, or RBAC. In this model, access permissions are assigned based on a user's job role. For example, a marketing employee might receive access to campaign management systems, while an HR administrator might be granted access to employee records. Analysts must ensure that role definitions are specific, justified, and regularly reviewed. A common issue in RBAC environments is role creep, where users accumulate permissions over time as they change roles without losing access to prior resources. Analysts must implement periodic access reviews, deprovision access that is no longer necessary, and automate enforcement where possible. Expect exam questions that test your ability to apply RBAC effectively or identify oversights in its implementation. Attribute-based access control, or ABAC, is a more dynamic model that evaluates multiple attributes before granting access. These attributes can include the user's department, the resource classification, the time of day, or even the device being used. ABAC allows for context-aware access decisions and is often used in environments that require flexible, risk-sensitive access controls. Analysts must understand how ABAC policies are written, how attributes are collected and validated, and how to troubleshoot conflicting rules. Because ABAC allows highly granular control, misconfigurations are common. The exam may include scenarios where ABAC is used and ask you to determine which attribute conditions would allow or deny access to a resource. Discretionary access control, or DAC, gives resource owners the ability to assign permissions to other users. This model is often used in smaller environments or for collaborative tools like shared folders. While DAC offers flexibility, it also introduces risk. Users may grant excessive permissions to others without understanding the security implications. Analysts must monitor permission changes, audit access logs, and enforce limits on who can share what. Privilege escalation and data leakage are frequent issues in DAC systems. On the CYSA Plus exam, you may be asked to identify scenarios where DAC leads to policy violations or to recommend compensating controls. Mandatory access control, or MAC, is the most rigid access control model. In this model, access decisions are based on security classifications assigned to users and resources. For example, a user with a confidential clearance cannot access a document labeled Top Secret. Analysts working in environments with MAC must ensure that classification labels are applied consistently, that enforcement mechanisms are operating correctly, and that users do not bypass controls. MAC is commonly used in government or military systems where strict data control is required. On the exam, expect questions that contrast MAC with other models or ask how to implement it in high-security environments. Zero trust principles heavily influence IAM in modern environments. The core of zero trust is to never trust and always verify. Every access request is evaluated in real time, with no assumptions based on device location, network segment, or prior authentication. Analysts must understand how zero trust affects identity verification, session management, and micro-segmentation. For instance, a zero trust environment might require step-up authentication when a user attempts to access sensitive data or initiate a privileged action. Analysts must monitor for policy enforcement failures and anomalies that indicate lateral movement attempts. The exam may include questions asking how IAM practices change when zero trust is implemented. Continuous monitoring is essential in IAM operations. Analysts must monitor authentication logs for signs of credential abuse, such as repeated failed login attempts, logins from new or unexpected locations, or simultaneous sessions from multiple locations. Privilege escalation events, disabled security controls, and anomalies in session durations are all signs of compromise. Analysts must tune alerting systems to prioritize these behaviors and ensure logs are retained and accessible for analysis. The CYSA Plus exam will often present log entries or incident scenarios and require you to identify suspicious access behaviors. Auditing is another pillar of IAM success. Regular audits ensure that access rights align with organizational policy, that inactive accounts are disabled, and that system changes are appropriately logged and reviewed. Analysts must review user activity logs, session recordings, and system access reports to identify trends, policy violations, or gaps in enforcement. Tools that support audit logging, like SIM platforms and PAM solutions, provide analysts with the information needed to investigate and remediate access issues. Exam scenarios may involve reviewing access logs and choosing the next appropriate action based on observed behavior. When a security incident involves compromised credentials or unauthorized access, analysts must act quickly. Incident response in an IAM context involves disabling accounts, revoking tokens, forcing password resets or applying new MFA challenges. Analysts must also investigate the root cause, whether it was phishing, brute force, credential stuffing, or insider abuse. This often involves collaboration with other teams, including HR, IT, and legal, depending on the scope of the incident. The exam may challenge you with response scenarios that require correct prioritization and containment steps for identity-based threats. Integrating threat intelligence into IAM workflows enhances proactive detection. Analysts should subscribe to threat feeds that focus on credential dumps, brute force infrastructure, phishing domains, and tactics targeting identity systems. This intelligence can be used to alert on suspicious login attempts from known malicious IPs, or to block access to fake SSO portals designed for phishing. By combining real-time identity monitoring with threat intelligence, analysts can detect and respond to attacks more quickly and accurately. CYSA Plus questions may ask how to apply threat intelligence to identity monitoring, or how to configure alerts based on high-risk behaviors. Clear communication remains a critical success factor for IAM initiatives. Analysts must document IAM policies, explain authentication changes to users, and communicate incidents and findings to both technical and non-technical audiences. Whether presenting an audit report to leadership or guiding users through MFA enrollment, communication must be accurate, clear, and aligned with organizational goals. Poor communication can result in weak adoption, delayed remediation, or non-compliance with policy. The exam may test your understanding of how to present IAM concepts to different stakeholder groups, or how to document IAM findings in incident reports. To wrap up this episode, identity and access management models provide the framework for secure access control in modern cybersecurity environments. From RBAC and ABAC to federation and zero trust, each model offers tools and policies for reducing risk and enforcing accountability. Analysts who understand these models, monitor them properly, and respond to threats quickly are far more effective in their role and far more prepared for the CYSA Plus exam. Continue reviewing IAM scenarios, practicing log analysis, and staying updated on identity threats to sharpen your readiness and deepen your impact in your future role. Thanks for listening. To learn more about cybersecurity, please visit baremetalcyber.com. There you will find best-selling books, videos, and even more free cybersecurity training courses. Please subscribe to the Prepcast and our various podcasts. And thanks for listening.